This presentation focuses on experimental research designs. First, we're going to review characteristics of experimental research designs, outline different types of experimental research designs, and then specifically discuss single subject research design. Experimental research designs have four main characteristics. First, we have direct control of an intervention or treatment that we're initiating to our participants. Second, we have control of extraneous or confounding variables. As you may remember, these are types of variables or things that can affect our data outside of our experiment. We can compare like groups for equivalencies, and then random assignment. There are 6 fundamental experimental research designs, and I don't expect for you to memorize all of them. However, I do want you to be familiar with the basic components of each of them. If you look at the 6 different designs, they're broken up into 3 participant categories. So first we have a single group, then we have non-equivalent groups, and then we have randomized groups. In our single group category, we can develop designs that are post-test only or pre-test and post-test to mark the evaluation of an intervention within a single group. Then we have non-equivalent groups. So these are non-randomized groups that we can use to test either post-test only or pre-test and post-test. And then in this instance, we have a control group. So we're looking at our intervention within 2 groups. So one of them has an intervention and the control group does not. Finally, we have our randomized groups. And this is when participants are randomly assigned to 2 different groups. And we can test them either post-test only after an intervention or pre-test and then post-test. Here is a chart I wanted to share with you that shows specific notations and symbols and how they relate to certain design elements in research. You'll probably see these in articles or in textbooks and even in this presentation later on. The notation R stands for random assignment, so that means our participants are randomly assigned. X stands for the intervention or treatment that we're initiating in the research study. O stands for observation, which can either be pre-test, post-test. And then A, B, C, D, etc. stands for the groups of participants. So if we have 2 groups, you usually see an A and a B. And here's kind of what this all looks like when we look at it together. The designs that we talked about are actually broken up into 3 different levels: pre-experimental, quasi-experimental, and then true experimental. And there's their schema. Here's another chart I wanted to share that shows once again the different levels, the types, and the schema of quantitative research designs. I also wanted to show you this chart because it also highlights the statistical analysis that's commonly used and associated with each different type of specific design. If you're interested in conducting any kind of quantitative research in the future, I highly recommend bookmarking this because it will come in handy a lot of times in the future as you go through designing your research and then conducting your analysis. Finally, I just want to discuss single subject design research because it's very widely used in educational studies, clinical practices, and in all types of human research. Single subject design is when we focus on an intervention with a particular participant, or one group of participants. It's labeled as a quasi-experimental design because it's not quite true experimental research, but it does have a lot of the experimental elements to it. We don't have random assignment that we need for an experimental research design, but we do have an intervention that we're implementing. In single subject design research, we record how an intervention affects an individual either before and after the intervention or before, during, and after the intervention. In this case, the individual characteristic that we're measuring and looking at pre-test and post-test is the dependent variable, with the intervention that we're implementing as the independent variable. And we look at baseline and intervention conditions. So we mark behavior before the intervention and then time during the intervention. Concluding main points for this presentation. There are specific characteristics required of experimental research designs, and we outlined those 4 characteristics. There are various types of experimental designs incorporating single or multiple participants, variables, and interventions. And as we saw in the levels, those different experimental designs can be categorized into pre-experimental, quasi-experimental, and true experimental. Finally, single subject design, which is widely used in human research, typically focuses on the influence of interventions on one participant or one group of participants.